There comes a moment in life when you stop wanting more. Not because you gave up, not because you got everything you wanted, but because something inside you, quietly, almost without warning, just stops reaching. I want to talk about that moment today, because most people I know, when it happened to them, they thought something was wrong with them. They went to a doctor. They Googled loss of motivation. Some of them called it a midlife crisis. But here's the thing nobody told them. That moment wasn't a breakdown. It was a recalibration. And there's actually a name for it, backed by research. And once you understand what's really happening in your brain and in your life when it hits, you'll never see ambition the same way again. Let me tell you about Marcus. Marcus is 44. He runs a mid-sized logistics company in Atlanta. For 18 years, he was the kind of guy who checked email before his feet hit the floor. He had a vision board. He tracked his KPIs personally. He read every book about high performance that ever made a bestseller list. And then one Tuesday, nothing special about it, no tragedy, no diagnosis, Marcus sat in his car in the parking garage of his own building, and he just didn't want to go in. Not because he hated his job, not because anything was wrong. He said, and I'm quoting him here, "I just realized I didn't know why I was still running." Now, if you've felt something like that, even a version of it, I need you to stay with me. Because what Marcus was experiencing has a technical term in developmental psychology. It's called goal disengagement. And before you assume that sounds like a fancy word for quitting, it's not. Here's the unexpected part. Studies out of the University of Zurich show that people who are skilled at goal disengagement, who can consciously let go of goals that no longer serve them, actually have lower cortisol, better sleep, stronger immune function, and significantly higher life satisfaction than people who can't let go. In other words, the people society calls driven are sometimes the least equipped to be happy. Marcus didn't have a crisis that Tuesday. He was, for the first time in 18 years, receiving a signal from himself. The question is, are you receiving yours? Okay, let me get a little neuroscience-y on you for a second, but I promise I'll make it worth your time. Most people think dopamine is the pleasure chemical. It's not. Dopamine is the anticipation chemical. It fires before you get the thing, not after. This is why buying something feels better than owning it, why the planning of a vacation is often more exciting than the vacation itself, why closing a deal gives you a 2-day high and then nothing. Your brain is built, literally wired, to keep you wanting. And when you're young, that's not a bug, it's a feature. You need that engine running to build skills, to take risks, to compete, to grow. But here's what nobody puts in the self-help books. The engine doesn't know when to stop. It will keep burning fuel even after you've arrived. Even after you have the career, the house, the status, the relationship. The dopamine loop will find the next thing to chase. And if you don't consciously intervene at some point, you will spend your entire life being productive and never once feel like it was enough. That's not ambition. That's anxiety wearing ambition's clothes. And here's the twist. Researchers at Stanford found that in adults over 40, there's a measurable shift in the prefrontal cortex's reward processing. The brain literally starts weighting present moment satisfaction more heavily than future rewards. It's not decline. It's not depression. It is your brain, biologically, updating its operating system. Older adults aren't losing drive. They're recalibrating what drive is for. I want to introduce you to Elena. Elena is 51. She spent her career in corporate law. Partner by 36. Respected, well compensated, Miserable in a way she couldn't explain to anyone because, from the outside, she had everything. When Elena was 48, she took a 3-week sabbatical. Not to find herself. She thought that was nonsense. She took it because she was genuinely exhausted, and her doctor told her to. On day 11, she told me this herself. She was sitting on a bench in a small village in Portugal. No laptop, no agenda, and she suddenly started crying. Not sad crying, just release. Like something she'd been clenching for 30 years finally let go. When she got home, Elena started working with a therapist who specialized in what's called identity foreclosure, which is the psychological term for when you become so fused with your achievements and your role that you have no idea who you are without them. And here's what Elena discovered. She had been carrying, for 3 decades, a belief that was never hers to begin with. Her father had told her when she was 9 years old, "The world only respects people who prove themselves." 9 years old. And she had organized her entire adult life around proving something to a man who had been dead for 11 years. That's not ambition. That's inherited weight. And before you think, well, that's her story, not mine, I want to ask you something. What are you chasing? And more importantly, why? Is it because you genuinely want it? Or is it because somewhere, a long time ago, someone implied you'd only be enough if you got it? The answer to that question changes everything. Here's where I need to push back on something, because I know what some of you are thinking. This sounds like giving up dressed up in spiritual language. And I get it. We live in a culture that has made restlessness into a virtue. Hustle culture didn't just sell you a work ethic, it sold you an identity. It told you that if you're not grinding, you're falling behind, that peace is for people who didn't have the courage to compete, that contentment is just what ambitious people call failure. But here's what the data actually says. A 25-year longitudinal study, one of the longest ever conducted on adult well-being, found that the most consistent predictor of life satisfaction at age 70 was not wealth, not status, not achievement. It was the quality of relationships and the sense of internal coherence. Meaning, did this person feel like their life made sense to them? Not impressive to others, coherent to themselves. So let me define what I actually mean by peace. Because I don't mean passivity. I don't mean indifference. I don't mean giving up on meaningful work. Peace, the real kind, is doing things from a place of choice rather than compulsion. It's the difference between I have to prove myself and I want to contribute something. I can't stop or I'll fall behind, and I'm building something I actually believe in. Same actions, completely different internal experience. The person grinding out of fear, they'll burn out. The person working from alignment, they'll still be going at 65, and they'll want to be. Okay, so how do you actually do this? I'm not going to give you a 30-step framework. I'm going to give you 3 questions. Ask them honestly. Write the answers down. Don't rush them. Question 1. What am I still chasing that I'd be relieved to let go of if I had permission? Notice I said permission, because a lot of us are holding on to goals that we abandoned emotionally years ago, but we won't let ourselves quit because we think it would mean something about us. Sometimes the most intelligent thing you can do is formally close the loop. Say, I'm choosing to put this down, not because I failed, because it's no longer mine. Question 2. If nobody could see what I was doing or judge the results, what would I spend my time on? This one is uncomfortable because it strips away performance. It removes the audience. And what's left? What you do in the dark, with no applause. That's the closest thing you have to your actual values. Question 3, and this is the hardest one. What would I need to believe about myself to feel like enough, right now, today, without changing anything? Not after the promotion, not after the weight loss, not after the launch. Right now. If you can't answer that, if the question feels genuinely impossible, that's not a character flaw. That's information. It tells you that somewhere in your operating system, there's a condition running. I will be enough when. And that condition? It never closes, unless you close it yourself. Marcus eventually went back into his building that day, but he restructured his company over the next 2 years to run without him being the engine. He coaches youth basketball on Saturdays now. He told me he's more useful, his word, than he's ever been. Elena still practices law, but she specializes now in pro bono work for asylum cases. She said, "For the first time, I'm doing work that doesn't require me to perform. I'm just doing it." At some point, you stop chasing everything. And I think, when it finally happens, it feels less like an ending and more like a clearing. Like fog lifting. Like you can finally see what was always there. It's not that you run out of energy. It's that you stop spending energy on things that were never yours to carry. And what's left, when you put all of that down, is smaller than what you had before. But it's real. And for the first time in a long time, it's enough. If this video landed for you, if any of it made you feel seen or gave you language for something you've been quietly feeling, I want you to do one thing before you close this tab. Not subscribe, not share, just one thing. Open your Notes app right now and write down one thing you've been chasing that you would genuinely feel relieved to put down. You don't have to act on it today. Just name it. Because the things we can name, we can choose. And the things we choose define the life we actually live. And if this felt like something a specific person in your life needed to hear, not to fix them, just to let them know they're not alone, share it with them. That's it. I'll see you in the next one.